Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chapter 11, which is all about performance appraisals. What's interesting about this chapter is so often I get, emails from students on this chapter because they maybe work for a company or they were doing an internship or whatever where the company has eliminated performance evaluations altogether, and that's actually a trend that we're seeing, nationwide. Is we're kind of seeing things on two extremes, where companies are eliminating performance appraisals altogether and going to different systems, or they're doing more instead of just doing like a yearly evaluation, they're doing more 360 feedback, and I'll talk about that here in a minute, and different ways that we look at evaluation. So it's a very interesting topic right now in the workplace. But several things that I want to draw your attention to for Chapter 11. First off is, the biggest, I think, the benefits of performance appraisals are obviously very obvious. You get information about how your boss perceives your work. You're able to show, what you've contributed. You're able to show how your coworkers and your customers view you. And a lot of times, performance appraisals are tied to your yearly increase or bonus and things like that. So that's all very obvious. But, there are a ton of concerns that people tend to share about performance appraisals. For example, the goals that are set for them are not clearly defined by their supervisor, so they don't know how to achieve the goal. They don't know how their performance is evaluated. How is the supervisor effectively monitoring performance and being able to recognize the contributions that they've made? And sometimes they're concerned that their supervisor doesn't even know their actual performance. Maybe their supervisor's not around enough to recognize what they're really contributing to the company. So all these factors play into, the different views on a performance appraisal. Which is why so many companies have gone to this idea of a balanced scorecard approach, and your book talks about that as well. So, a lot of times, your performance, you could just be based on your simple performance. Well, let's say your job is to make widgets, just making that term up, and your appraisal talks about how many average widgets you're making per day. Well, that's a good indicator, but a balanced scorecard approach will take other things in perspective. If you're making more, is a company selling more because you're making more? Is the line more efficient? Are you able to help out coworkers in other areas? Has your increased efficiency, changed the way that the process is done? All those different things play into a balanced scorecard. It helps you determine your self-value to the organization itself, and that's something that we want to focus very heavily on. Your book now talks about different ranking formats. How do we rank performance, essentially? And there are really several different ways that we could do this, but your book tends to focus on three main ones, and those are the three that I want to focus on well. The first one is what we call straight ranking, where you're ranked relative to each other. So John is number 1, Sally's number 2, Katie's number 3, George is number 4. It's ranked all the way down from your best performer to your worst performer. So, and again, that helps. It's probably the most commonly used approach because it's the easiest to understand. So you have your top performer who does better than anybody, who usually gets the biggest increase, all the way to your lowest performer, and that lowest performer could be for a variety of different reasons. But again, it's pretty easy to understand because it's a straight rank. The second type that your book discusses is about what we call alternation ranking. So usually it's pretty easy to recognize your best and your worst. So you start with your best performer and you have your worst performer. And then you kind of go, okay, who's my second best and then who's my second worst? And it kind of helps you get to the middle because most employees, as you can imagine, are in the middle. So it kind of helps your ranking if you start with the two extremes and then work your way in instead of going like a straight line, which is what straight ranking is. And then finally, the last approach is what we call paired comparison ranking. And again, this kind of makes raters rank judgments about pairs of people. You're comparing individuals to different pairs within each group. And again, it kind of helps you when you compare one person's ranking to another. If that person, if you rank them against 4 different people and they're better than the other 4, that kind of helps you make your overall rankings from top to bottom. So Exhibit 11.2 in your textbook does a phenomenal job of laying out the different ranking formats and how it is viewed. So make sure that you know Exhibit 11.2 for the exam, because that will definitely be covered. So as I mentioned earlier, so many companies are going to this idea of what we call 360-degree feedback, otherwise kind of known as multi-source feedback, where in a traditional feedback, you sit down with your supervisor and your supervisor acknowledges what you've done. Well, in a 360, yes, you meet with your supervisor, but you also meet with your peers. Those are who are the same level as you. You make your own self-determination. You get your customers to give you feedback. If you have any subordinates who directly report to you, you have them give feedback, and you take all of this feedback, and it helps you determine your overall performance. Because, for example, if your subordinates and your customers and your peers think you're doing a great job, but your supervisor thinks you're doing a terrible job, where is the disconnect there? What are your peers and your customers and your subordinates seeing that your supervisor is not seeing? So that's something that we absolutely have to consider, is an idea of a 360 feedback, because it's becoming very, very popular amongst evaluation ratings these days. Exhibit 11.11 is another exhibit that I really want to draw your attention to when it talks about errors and observation. Because again, no rater is perfect in these areas, and so we have to be careful about any errors that could come up as a result of our discussion. So Exhibit 11.11 talks about different ones, from halo, horn, recency, leniency. Make sure you study that exhibit very, very closely, because a couple of those are our test questions on our next exam. Because again, we need to know, for halo, do you tend to give everybody a higher overall grade just because you want to be nice? Horn is the exact opposite. You tend to rate people lower just because that's what you tend to do. Recency, do you tend to evaluate people who you just recently met with higher than those that you met with a while ago? Are you too lenient? Are you too strict? Make sure you read about what those errors and observation are and how to recognize them. Finally, the last part of Chapter 11 that I want to talk about is about equal opportunity, EEO. There is a case, a court case in your book called Brito versus Zia Company, and it was a very, very interesting case. And what came out of it was the court stressed 6 issues in setting up a performance appraisal system. So make sure you read those 6 things that companies and organizations really need to do, that the court says will help create a more equitable, inclusive, and diverse performance appraisal program that will stand up to scrutiny and will stand up to different evaluations in the way that we look at things. So again, a lot of information in this chapter. Again, I don't want to sit here and debate the pros and cons of performance appraisals, because again, I think, myself included, most professors who study this stuff, most supervisors and most companies still think that appraisals are a good thing, but they can be messed up very, very easily. So if we kind of follow the ideas that we talk about in this chapter, the whole process can be set up very well, and it's something that we can have a lot of success in. So if you have any questions, please let me know. But again, a very, very important chapter talking about performance appraisals, as we build towards, the end of our semester. So thank you, everybody. And as always, if you have questions, let me know.